And indeed, because the day clearly belongs to the two leading ladies, Jayalalithaa and Mamata Banerjee, who have decimated competition and proved their might. But the big question now is around the goods and services tax. Both the leading ladies, Mamata and Jayalalithaa, will of course play a very, very decisive role in the fate of that crucial legislation. Mamata has once again backed the passage of the GST bill today, but Jayalalithaa has so far remained non-committal. So what does this mean for the crucial legislation? What is the takeaway really from this decisive verdict? Joining us now to talk about all that and more is Vinod Sharma, Political Affairs Editor at Hindustan Times, and Jagnnathan, Editorial Director at Swarajya Magazine. Let me start by asking you first, Mr. Sharma, because, you know, many of the polls got it wrong as far as Jayalalithaa was concerned, because it just seemed that there was another anti-incumbency wave, and then this will ensure that the DMK, the old man of Indian politics, Karunanidhi, would storm back. What do you think really worked for Jayalalithaa in this case?
I think that, the only significant thing that I can see that happened in the run-up to the elections was that Jayalalithaa promised more freebies than the DMK. On the ground, the situation has changed for the AIADMK because it has lost, in terms of aggregate seats, it has lost. The DMK has done better compared to the previous elections, but it could not pip it at the post. And I think one reason for that perhaps was that Mr. Karunanidhi decided to project himself as the chief ministerial candidate rather than his son Stalin. And there was a whole lot of young voter in Tamil Nadu which perhaps found greater attraction towards Jayalalithaa. And this also has a tremendous irony for the AIADMK party. For the DMK party, that this was a veritable swan song of Mr. Karunanidhi.
Right.
And
right.
This is the last election that he has fought in his long and checkered career. And he has lost this election. And had he won this election, and that is purely hypothetical now, he is the only person who has nominated his successor, which is Mr. Stalin. Jayalalithaa has not named her successor, and I think that in the early part of her second tenure, she would be better off doing it if she wants the party to remain when she demits politics or retires from politics.
Right. Mr. Jagnnathan, then is that a fair conclusion then that we are indeed perhaps looking at the end of an illustrious career as far as Mr. Karunanidhi is concerned, given that going by today's verdict?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Karunanidhi, this was supposed to be his last election, and he got all his calculations wrong. He didn't get enough allies. He had only one ally, a Congress, which actually had got 40 seats, and Congress is a spent force in Tamil Nadu. So there is no way they could have actually won the thing, especially when there is a splintering of votes with three other things. So I think his calculations are all wrong. He should have bent over backwards to get either the DDMDK or the PMK on his side. With one additional party, he would have won the election. But I think the alliance calculation went totally wrong. That's what defeated him. Otherwise, there was a good chance of anti-incumbency getting him at least 120 seats.
Right. Mr. Jagnnathan, also comment a little bit about the victory of Mamata Banerjee, because winning over 200 seats, again, how many polls, actually suggested that? Because most were sort of hovering anywhere between the 160 and the 180 mark. But here, she has in fact bettered her 2011 tally. And especially at a time when many thought, at least sitting in Delhi studios, many thought, that the various scams and more recently, the tragic collapse of the flyover would eventually dent Mamata Banerjee's popularity. In fact, I was also speaking to Swapan Dasgupta a week ago. He also said the same thing, that Mamata will certainly win, but she's certainly not going to win in the margin with which she won 2011. So what went wrong with all those calculations, and what was wrong in that assumption that many political pundits seem to have made?
Yeah, I think if you actually look at, even though in theory the left and the Congress looked like a formidable opposition to Mamata, effectively what happened was we ended up with the Tina factor. Because who in his right mind in West Bengal would think that the Congress and the left would form a government in West Bengal, even assuming they had got 150 seats? So nobody thought that was a viable coalition to form. They wouldn't have known who would be the chief minister, who will play second fiddle, who will stay outside the thing. So there was only one viable candidate for government in West Bengal. So by elimination, you can't vote the BJP in West Bengal because they were nowhere in the picture. They were just trying to get some marginal increase in vote share. So what option did you have in West Bengal beyond Mamata actually? That's what swung the whole thing in her favor.
Absolutely. Mr. Vinod Sharma, comment on that because, many would say that the alliance with Congress was fraught from the first day because, on one side they were locked in a fierce battle in Kerala, on the other and they were joining hands. So in that sense, do you think that eventually, going by the numbers, did the Congress actually, even though they have won more seats than the left, do you think that in terms of the sheer alliance, the Congress had a lot more to gain and left had a lot more to lose because of tying up with each other?
No, this is retrospective wisdom because now we have the figures in front of us and the left has lost heavily and the Congress has done better, won a couple of more seats than it had in the previous assembly. But I have always believed that, alliance at the top between top leaders would never work unless there is a social alliance between the constituents of individual parties. And I think that adequate preparatory work hadn't gone into the left Congress alliance in West Bengal. And that is where I think it lost out badly. And the left parties have lost out more for the simple reason that the cadres who were until when they were in power were rooting for them and they enjoyed their patronage are today enjoying the patronage of Mamata Banerjee's Trinamool Congress. It's an irony of Indian politics that in states like AIADMK, like Tamil Nadu, and in West Bengal, which are states with the high degree of consciousness, political consciousness, and a very strong cultural background, that their people are aligning their fates with political parties in terms of livelihood and survival and a degree of clout. And this is, this is something which needs to be corrected. Ms. Mamata Banerjee had set up sports clubs where funds are released from the government coffers to these clubs, and these clubs are at liberty to spend them in the name of, under various heads, various schemes. See? And this is given a great vested interest to young people there to stay by the side of Mamata Banerjee, which hasn't happened in the case of either the Congress or the left. I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow the Congress or the left form a government there in the outside chance of that happening. They may do the same thing. Like in Tamil Nadu, Jayalalithaa came out with her manifesto after that of DMK in order to, beat the DMK in terms of promises, and we'll have to see now how they'll fulfill those promises and how much of a drain would that be on the exchequer of the state and how much would it impact the economy of the state.
Absolutely. In fact, one of the interesting proposals, one of the promises rather I should say, in Jayalalitha's manifesto was giving a 50% rebate on two-wheelers. I thought that was perhaps one of the most interesting sort of promises made in the recent past. Mr. Jagnnathan, do you think now with these two decisive wins, both for the two great ladies, you think BJP will have no other option now but to somehow reach out to them? Do you now suspect BJP wooing them in some way because a lot of key legislations are still pending in the parliament?
Yes, I would think so. I think the BJP has to change strategy. I think the degree of hubris with which it went during 2014 ruined the whole connection that the central party had with the regional parties. After talking about cooperative and competitive federalism, they started acting a little too egoistic. And I think this time if they come down from their pedestal, I'm sure they'll get a lot of regional parties to play ball on specific bits of legislation. On GST, of course, there is a deadlock because the manufacturing states, which includes Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, are not so happy with it because the Congress insists that there will be no 1% extra tax and various other issues. So I don't think GST, the way forward is very smooth. And the Congress anyway is stuck on that 18% constitutional amendment angle. So I think, but other pieces of legislation can certainly move forward because you'll have to build tactical alliances with state powers and get it done. Some state powers will back you, some will not. So you'll need to work
Right.
on state level egos and get small things done one by one.
But Mr. Jagannathan, one question on GST, because do you see now with this drubbing that Congress has got, its sort of defiance, its strategy to obstruct in the parliament, do you think now this is going to force them to sort of revisit that approach?
Yeah, I would think so, because all that obstructionism has not helped them anywhere. So I think they'll probably, if they're a bit mortified, they will certainly try and be a little more cooperative. But having got onto a high horse saying that we need to put 18% in the constitution as a limit for GST and all that, they'll find it difficult to back down. But I think with some tact, with some sense of give and take from the government side, I think the Congress will probably play ball in the short run while they retire to lick their wounds that they got, their self-inflicted wounds in this election.
Yes. Final word then to you, Mr. Vinod Sharma, because we just now had Arun Jaitley some time back, and he said that what these numbers actually reveal about the Congress is that at one point they had the ability to actually be the fulcrum, around which you'd have regional parties allying with them. Do you think now with this drubbing, the Congress being the fulcrum, you think that has now sort of, at least for the time being, received a major setback?
I may say one thing, that it is all very well with political parties to claim victory. And, political parties, even when they lose, they say our vote percentage has gone up, But in this election, let us take a closer look, If you take the aggregate number of seats won by the BJP in these 5 states and the aggregate number of seats won by the Congress in 5 states, then I think that the BJP slogan of a Congress Mukt Bharat would sound hollow. So the reality is that the Congress party is not able to put its act together despite the fact that it continues to have a presence on the ground. This is a serious challenge for the leadership, and the leadership has to reinvent itself, and the leadership has to send the message down the line that, unless the party associates with issues touching the people, unless the party plays a reasonably responsible role at the national level. Now, GST question, I think that it takes 2 to tango. If there isn't an ambience for the Congress or the opposition, other opposition parties, notably the left, to cooperate, then it will not happen. You can't grow apples in deserts, there has to be a snowfall for that. You have to be cooler climate, So I think let the BJP create a cooler climate, because it needs the left and the Congress. It's a constitutional amendment bill. It cannot be passed in pandemonium, and it cannot be passed with a number is required.
Absolutely, Mr. Vinod Sharma. Introspection required on both from BJP and Congress is one. But Mr. Sharma and Mr. Jagannathan, I appreciate you joining us here on the big picture and taking us and giving us really the big picture of these elections. But coming